feelings attached to it. And this is because today is the Biafra Day. My name is Chisom Chinedu. Of course, I have with me in the studio Dr. Tony Olisa Mbeki, ready to give us razor-sharp analysis of all of the matters we're going to be bringing to the table this morning. So, Biafra Day is marked on the 30th of May every year. Since 1970, to commemorate the declaration of the Republic of Biafra on May 30, 1967, and to honor the memory of those who died during the Nigerian Civil War, which lasted from 1967 to 1970, also known as the Biafran War. It was on a fateful Tuesday, being May 30th, 1967, that Colonel Odumegwu Ojukwu, the then military governor of Eastern Nigeria, formally declared the eastern region of Nigeria as an independent republic called Biafra. This action followed a period of escalating ethnic tensions, pogroms against Igbos in the north, and a failure of peace talks. So today is a memorial for the estimated 1.1 to 3 million people, mostly civilians, who died during the Civil War, many from starvation and disease. It is also a symbol of identity and reflection for many in the Igbo-speaking Southeast and others who support the ideals of Biafra. Also, it is a call for justice and dialogue on issues affecting the Southeast, including marginalization and self-determination, which still plagues the Southeast. However, the conversation about Biafra Day cannot be complete without a mention of a particular Biafran unsung hero known as Bruce Mayrock. Now, he is a white man, a Jewish person who paid the ultimate price by sacrificing his life so that the Biafrans may be saved by setting himself ablaze in the UN garden in New York. And so before we continue the conversation this morning, we're going to let you in on more about this man. Do take a listen.
A Flame for the Forgotten. The story of Bruce Mayrock. A day in history, 30th of May 1969. Remember? You should remember, especially the heroes, the unsung heroes. Udala Radio has a story to tell, especially on this day.
My name is Chikanon, and I happen to be the convener of Sacrifice Above Self, a group of people that came together to appreciate the love of somebody that happened not to be our brother, but remembered what we were passing through and decided to take his life on behalf of all of us.
It was a warm Thursday afternoon, May 30th, 1969. Outside the United Nations headquarters in New York City, a young man stepped onto the lawn. In his hands, a cardboard sign. Moments later, flames engulfed his body, and the world was forced to look. The name of that young man was Bruce Mayrock. He was just 20 years old.
Bruce Mayrock was a student of Columbia University. As at the time the incident happened, 30th day of May 1969. The incident of immolating himself, setting himself ablaze. Because of what? Simply because he had the atrocities being committed against the people of Biafra in Igbo land, and he was crying on our behalf, sending letters out to presidents and government officials, but nobody listened to him. And on this particular day, May 30th, 1969, he was there in front of UN building where the entire world body had gathered for a meeting.
Bruce grew up in Westbury, Long Island. He was a student at Columbia University and the Jewish Theological Seminary, but his heart was troubled by a war far from home. In Nigeria, A brutal civil war had birthed the short-lived Republic of Biafra. The world stood by as famine and genocide unfolded, but Bruce refused to be silent.
Unfortunately, this guy never knew anybody. He was an American, not a Nigerian, who talked less of being an Igbo person. But, he saw the suffering through writings, through reading what the papers he was reading and all that. The suffering, the atrocities our people were being subjected to, and then, decided to start crying on our behalf.
Bruce tried letters, he tried protests, but nothing changed. And so, he made a haunting decision to give his life, hoping it might awaken the conscience of the world.
And unfailing, after crying for some time and without succeeding, especially on that particular day, there was this meeting of UNO in New York. Out of heartbreak, this young man, at the age of 20, had to set himself ablaze, calling on people, especially the world body, to stop the genocide in Biafra.
He walked to the United Nations lawn, poured gasoline on himself, and lit a match. He collapsed near a sculpture quoting Isaiah, "Let us beat our swords into plowshares." He died just after midnight. His act went largely unnoticed in American media, but halfway across the world, in Nigeria, he became a legend.
Unfortunately, incidentally, my own worry is that the people for whom this young man died at the age of 20, you can imagine the people that call themselves Gen Z now, Gen Z or whatever, these days, at that age, this man took this decision to die for a people he never met, he never knew.
To many, however, he became a symbol of moral courage, a reminder that even in silence, there can be power. Even in fire, there can be hope.
We are trying to emulate the sacrifice. Nobody can do that for you. We are trying to ensue, or rather sue for peace in the entire world, but particularly in Igbo land in Nigeria, where nobody calls any person any person. Yeah, we are concerned primarily with initiating peace moves anywhere there is a problem, anywhere we sense that we should intervene to make sure that this reigns. But essentially is to be sure that the people for whom this guy died remember him by creating awareness about his suffering, his death, in fact his fight, his activism. And on seeing all this, after knowing and hearing about what Bruce Mero stood for, I said to myself that I must keep on discussing Mero anytime, anywhere I have the opportunity. And especially to bring all these things to the knowledge of our people. Not every person knows about this young man.
More than 5 decades have passed. The world has seen many wars, many protests, but youths, now men, are doing everything they can to keep his legacy alive.
Talking about what Bruce Mero stood for and still stands for, peace in our generation. Peace was what they lived for and they died for. And then we said we are going to continue to profess Bruce Mero to bring his activities to the knowledge of our people. We've done quite a lot trying to make sure that peace reigns anywhere there is conflict, primarily, and at the same time, to do this, to achieve this. For the past 5-6 years, we've been embarking on a walk in his memory, 10-kilometer walk every 30th day of May since 5 years ago. We started some time ago, as 2020, with a walk from Obunike, Ogidi Market, the building material market at Ogidi, from there to DMJ roundabout. And we'll be doing that at some other places choosing different locations, different venues along the line. And last year, we did something remarkable at Oka around Ebuka Square, and many people joined us as well. And what we are telling people is to remember this young man that died for us. He died for my age, for my generation. Without Mayrock, I so believe, the world body, the end of the war in Biafra, in Nigeria then, wouldn't have been discussed. His death brought about the discussions around how to end that. That's my belief. And without that, many of us would have been so forgotten by now. Be ready to assist people, to help people navigate out of problem, out of trouble. That's what Mayrock stood for. We'll keep on advocating for peace, suing for peace everywhere we go, in all things we do, and trying to remind our people about what this young man stood for and still stands for today. And to remember him and pay him back, for all he has done for us. And then, unfortunately, we paid the supreme sacrifice so that we can survive. As Namaro, that is an Igbo adage. And if you don't know from where your suffering started, you may not know where it will end and where it will take you to. Again, is that Igbo people will say that Okoko and that's what we should be showing to smell. People should, learn how to honor our past heroes, especially somebody like Nero that, paid the supreme sacrifice for our people. It was only in history Jesus Christ did that for the entire world. He did. People are honoring and remembering and worshiping Jesus Christ. But look at this at the age of 20. You cannot say he doesn't know anything. He didn't know anything. He knew where he was going to. He knew what he was fighting for, but the people he fought for did not know him. I also want to seize the opportunity as well to remember some other non-Igbo players in the Civil War. The book I read about those people, written by Barrister Tudor Fodile, talked about somebody like Wolo Soyinka. But Wolo Soyinka is a Nigerian, and at the time this thing was happening, regardless of the role he played in favor of Biafra, happened to be a Nigerian and pretty older than Mayrock. Another person that was appreciated was Lieutenant Colonel Fajuyi Adekunle Fajuyi. Adekunle Fajuyi, when it mattered most, when they came to his house to arrest our brother, Aguyonsi, said, no, don't kill this man in my house. Instead of killing him in my house, take me first. And they shot him, killed him first before killing you. These are the people, the players, the actors that should be, appreciated by our people.
What is the cost of moral conviction, and what would we be willing to give to save lives we'll never meet? Bruce Mayrock didn't want recognition. He wanted justice. He gave everything he had to speak for those no one else would. Today, we ought to remember him, not just for how he died, but for why he did. A fire burned at the gates of power, and for a moment, the world saw. This feature story is edited by Chinyere Omiko for Udala Radio. Special thanks to the convener for peace, Honorable Chike Anyonu.
Most definitely, the conversation has officially started right here on Udala Radio 104.7 FM. And of course, like I said earlier, I'm not alone in the studio. I have with me Dr. Tony Olisa Mbeki. He's going to be doing justice to all of the stories that would be following right from this point, which will be taken from the front pages of our papers. Now, speaking about the Biafran Day, it is not also without controversies, as it is not officially recognized by the Nigerian government and is often linked to separatist movements, made worse in recent years by the enforcement of the sit-at-home order by some pro-Biafran people, and unfortunately it has also gotten worse by the would I call it series of unpalatable things that have followed in a bid for this enforcement to be active and take shape in southeastern states. But of course, we are going to quickly tell you what the front pages of the papers say. On the Punch newspaper, Anambra police confirm patrol for May 30, sit at home. Midterm review, APC fights back as Labour counters Tinubu's scorecard. Aviation sector struggles to stay aloft in turbulent skies. WAEC under fire as exam chaos sparks outrage. Tinubu's intervention saved rivers, says Fubara. On the Nation newspaper, APC governors, ministers, others rate high on performance. What President Tinubu should do with economy before 2027. WAEC apologizes for delayed exam. Udala heads to Supreme Court as appeal court affirms Okpebholo's election. Tinubu's 2 years of build reforms, national revival. On the Vanguard, we've made significant efforts at solving food insecurity. The CDS has that to say. 21 corpses recovered as midnight flood sweeps 50 homes in Niger. WAEC exam in darkness, a national disgrace. Tiku has that to say. June 12, military forced Nigerians to choose between Abiola, Totha. That Waziri has that to say. FG clarifies external borrowing plan. Of course, heading to the Guardian. Atiku AFDB PRP flag. FG's loan plan despite impressive IGR returns. Ohaneze, others for Tinubu's scorecard as APC blames past leaders. Post Tinubu's endorsement, more questions than answers in ruling APC. We're starting the conversation this morning from the Punch newspaper, and we're also starting with that story on Biafra. Tony, giving the razor sharp analysis here. May 30th, Biafra Day, CP warns against undermining national security. We are learning that ahead of the illegal annual Biafra Day, this story is from the Leadership newspaper, ahead of the illegal annual Biafra Day celebration, normally being enforced throughout the defunct Eastern region today, May 30th, the Commissioner of Police in charge of Anambra State, CP Ikioye Rutugu, has warned those planning to enforce this year's ceremony to stop it. He warned that if his command would not condone any act that threatened national security. And so, Tony, before this year, we have seen talks about Biafra Day. We have seen talks about the police intensifying patrol. This morning when I was coming out, I think I saw police officers at one spot, somewhere around Ekene, if I'm not mistaken. But then we are looking at efforts being made so far over the years to make sure that when people decide to go about their businesses, regardless of what we know today to have been like in previous years, that they are safe. Also, we are going to be looking at how fitting, would I say how noble it is to map out today to honor Biafran fallen heroes. And again, who are these heroes? We already talked about one, Bruce Mayrock. He's one. The millions of Biafran children who died of starvation, who died of hunger, the women who died of several diseases, the men, the boys who were forced to fight even before they could say their names. Who are these heroes? And is today fitting? Is it fitting to once in a year remember that lives were sacrificed for the peace, or do I say seeming peace, that we have today?
A lot, many things have been said about the Nigerian Biafran Civil War. No matter how we try to avoid it, you cannot avoid their shadow. Your shadow is something you cannot avoid. And I must commence this discussion by recognizing and also paying tribute to the man we've talked about, Bruce Mayrock. Just as the feature story we all listened had it, 20-year-old American student at Columbia University who tragically set himself on fire on May 29, 1969 on the grounds of the United Nations headquarters, New York. And then we call it self-immolation. And for him, it was a protest against the genocide of Biafrans during the Nigerian Civil War. And he was deeply moved, according to the feature story we listened to. He was deeply moved by the sufferings he witnessed, had actively protested the war, but nobody listened to him. But then he felt that the only way to draw attention to what he was protesting was self-immolation by setting himself ablaze. He wrote letters even to the U.S. president and other government officials, but all his efforts were ignored. So we saw how he succumbed to his injuries. And remember, when we talk about the Civil War, the Nigerian Civil War, I also want to say something here before I go to talk about that very issue. You can't extricate yourself from your shadow. It is part of our history, and it's something we must remember. And there are many countries that have also recognized the Civil War. I think when you were opening your statement, you say that even when we don't want to recognize these things, that these things are there for us. But there are countries that have recognized their civil wars in likes of United States of America, even Ukraine, even Lebanon, and so many of these countries, they have recognized. How do they recognize their civil war? There are many ways they did so. Many of them have monuments, museums, and even documentaries, even books, all dedicated for such period. And as part of history, these things are taught in school. So even I remember Spanish Civil War that spanned from 1936 down to 1939, widely recognized by Spanish government. And then even the Sri Lanka, their war that spanned from 1983 down to 2009. It was a long period. Sri Lankan war, civil war, recognized by their government because they acknowledge in historical and political discourse that the conflicts between the government and the Tamil Tigers, they recognize such as a civil war. Well taught in the school. And even the United Kingdom, UK, with so much copy from. There was English Civil War from 1642 down to 1651. Historically recognized, despite centuries old, centuries ago. And even in Africa here, we have Sudan, South Sudan, Civil War. But though these countries went their separate ways, and even in Ethiopia. But there are some countries that have decided that they would not recognize their wars. For them, the simple excuse could be, we don't want to divide ourselves more. And one thing, you have Syria, you have even Ethiopia, even the conflict in Tigray from 2020 down to 2022, the one we all witnessed. Even the Myanmar, their ethnic and political conflict. But even Ukraine. These are a few countries that say they will not recognize their wars, and Nigeria is also included because we have not also done same. And then it's important that in a way we must see this as a period of reflection. We learn from mistakes. A lot of mistakes were made, and that was why the war came in the first instance. And because of making what we call wrong attributes, you attributed something wrongly to some set of people or ethnic region. And I must say it here, because the first, what really triggered this civil war we had from the time we had it in this country in 1966 was the January 15 coup by a group of soldiers that felt they want to bring sanity. They want to bring patriotism back to the system. We saw the book written by Obasanjo, My Watch. We also saw the one written by IBB. Many of them have given their accounts that this group of soldiers, comprising soldiers from different ethnic dimensions, they wanted something better for this country. It was a way to show their patriotism. And that was how they did what they did on January 15, 1966. And in such act, a lot of heads rolled. We would also acknowledge the death of the Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa, Ahmadu Bello, and so many people that died in such system. But then it was tagged an Igbo coup. And because it was tagged an Igbo coup, tension started rising. Ethnic tension started rising because the other side, the northern region, felt that you can't just come and kill us. But they did not see it as what some group of soldiers were doing for themselves. They were not doing it for any ethnic group. They were not acting on the mandate of any ethnic group. They were doing it for themselves. For them, all they wanted was true patriotism. And from what IBB wrote, they wanted to install Awolowo, who was before then in Calabar prison for treasonable felony. They wanted just to enthrone him as the president, whom they think will bring the development, the transformation the country so needed at that time. The wrong attribution of such coup of 15th January 1966 sprouted some of these things we are saying. By May, there was pogrom because they killed our brothers, they killed our northern elites. And you saw how from 30,000 to 50,000 Igbos were massacred. Which other way to describe genocide? You did not go straight to those soldiers that did what they did. But I understand that even the counter coup of July, yes, the sole target was Agi Irunsi because of the way and manner he handled the post-January 15 coup. The way and manner he handled it. Some of the northern elites and northern soldiers, they were not comfortable with that. Because for them, those who had committed those things, having been caught, would have been exterminated, would have been summarily executed. But why having them in prison? That was just one. And then the unification decree, trying to unify the country, just trying to bring unitary system of government, which some of them felt was in favor of the Southeast. And then what it led was, the primary objective of that counter coup was to kill the head of state, whom after military took over, it fell on him to be the military head of state. I'm talking about General Samson Omunakwe Agi Irunsi. So when he went to visit Fadri, the then military governor of the Western region, you remember Fadri died alongside with him because Fadri wasn't the target. The target was
Fadri was collateral damage.
That is it. And then remember, even from what Agi Irunsi displayed, he was trying to display unity. He was trying to display patriotism because many warned him not to make such visit based on ethnic tension already, but he was thinking that we are one. And he went on that visit. And then some group of northern soldiers led by Lieutenant Colonel Moretala Muhammad did what they did. And for them, they call it remarch. Remember, before then, starting from May, the program has started. The counter coup was in July. And remember, the program started from May down to September. So these things are part of our history. And we are talking about somebody, a US citizen of Jewish descent, setting himself ablaze for what he described as absurdity. And we should also note that, because I have taken time to study wars around the different countries, I have taken time to study wars. And then if you have done such a study, it is important. You should know that we have got over about 10,000 plus wars in human history. We are talking about major wars. We are not talking about smaller conflicts. So we have had such number of these wars. And then the truth,
70.
But then even the point I'm trying to make was then that even the convention had been, or the Rome Statute had been even adopted. But some of these things were not observed. That was why the young man wrote to UN. You can't have a statute, you can't have such a convention, such law, and you are doing nothing about it. And we are seeing such happening in a particular place. And remember, what really touched the young man was the issue of blockade.
Yes, the food blockade. And
food blockade. And
starving,
it constitutes international war crime. There is no two ways about it. It really pained the young man that despite effort, despite a convention, despite a statute, despite what you have just said, that some of these things we are not complied with. But remember, we are looking at this as part of history and no more, no less. And recall that there are countries, in fact, I must let you know that reconciliation is harder to achieve after war than even waging the war itself. It's important we make this observation.
Now, speaking about reconciliations, Tony, permit me to butt in there because it's been over, like you said, 1967 to 1970. Has reconciliation been achieved after all of this time? What were the major issues that led to this war? Have they been addressed? Issues of marginalization, issues of ethnic divisions. This is 2025. How far have we come to addressing these issues? Also, I'd like you to quickly touch on the way that today is commemorated. Is there anything wrong in it? And what can we do to make it better? I mean, a day like this, and the much we hear about is the panic of sit at home, and not the emotions, and not, do I call it the respect that should come with a day like this? You know, when you study things that happened with the Civil War, the first time I came very close to understand what it must have been like was when I read Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's Half of a Yellow Sun. I couldn't sleep. I stayed up all night to find out if there was ever an end to what it was all about. And then one of the protagonists in the story went missing and was never found. And that is to tell you how dark war is. There is never a closure. That's how dark it is. And even where there is a closure, the reconciliation you so spoke of, is it really implemented? Have the people of the Southeast gotten closure in terms of these issues being addressed?
Remember, I did say that reconciliation is harder to achieve compared to waging the war in the first instance. Preventing it is even more easier than achieving reconciliation when it had happened, because by then a lot of injuries must have been meted out, and it becomes so difficult. But the truth remains that you ask the question, have we been able to do that? I think there was a declaration. Biafran troops surrendered to Nigerian authority right in 1970. But then there was declaration of no victor, no vanquish. And there was the constitution of the 3 R's. And you ask the question, the 3 R's were just formality. When you say no victor, no vanquish, that has not been in fact, it has not reflected in everything, because there has been systematic approach towards these people. Because the major fear during the war was Igbo dominance. That was one of the major fears. But the actions of group of soldiers were attributed to entire ethnic group. That was the first mistake. You don't attribute what some soldiers did to entire ethnic group. So I have also said that. But the most annoying part of it, most times if you watch some documentaries, you will cry. There are documentaries you will watch, you will see young children. Kwashiorkor was not even a known disease at that period. And then you cannot behold his sight. And sometimes you see a mother with children, malnutritioned, kwashiokored, feeding the child breast milk. I've seen some of these pictures. They are disturbing psychologically. You cannot even behold these pictures. But just like I said earlier on, the Geneva Convention in 1949 and the additional protocols in 1977 did say something about issue of starvation blockade. But there was also a Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court in 1998. When you attack civilians and civilian objects during a war, is a war crime. When you maltreat protected persons, there are persons during war that are protected. Maybe you render torture or give them inhuman treatment, taking hostages, is a war crime. And when you starve the civilian populace, deny them of essentials, because intentionally, when you starve civilian populace, it is no more war, it is genocide. That's why some people are saying what happened in this country was not just civil war, it was pure genocide. If not, why would you have shifted the attention from the combatants to the civilians? So it's a war crime when you intentionally used starvation of civilians. And also there are many war crimes. So the point is, have we achieved true reconciliation? True reconciliation would have come from our attitude, from our actions. These ethnic divisions, in fact, this war ought to have taught us a lot, and we ought to have learned so much from the Civil War. And for those who have taken time to commemorate it, because there are people that say illegal commemoration. For me, I don't see anything illegal about it. Somebody's remembering something. If you remember the death of your father, is it illegal? If you remember the death of your mother, is it illegal? Remember, I started by saying we cannot live in fact, trying to avoid our shadows. We cannot avoid our shadows. These things are part of our shadows. They are there.
And they haunt us.
No matter how you try to avoid it, it will haunt you. The true thing is for us to achieve that reconciliation. The moment, because there are so many figures, 1.5 to 3 million.
3 million.
People died. Major people that died in that war did not die as a result of fighting. They died as a result of starvation. The food blockade. That was why when the former president made a statement, these people, they are dot in a circle. A particular platform deactivated his line because there was a petition online. How could a sitting president make such statement? And it tells you a whole lot. So, because it generated fuels tension, but it was later that fuel. So the point is, we are part of this country, and I've always counseled every one of us that we are not second-hand people. We are first class. And then you have that equity just as every other person. Yes, you wanted to succeed. It didn't work. And by virtue of providence, because if God had wanted it, it would have been possible. But being that it wasn't so, the truth for us is to rebuild this country. The need for us to heal these wounds, and for the need for us to be united and achieve that unity. But our actions will reflect this unity, because what everybody speaks these days, unity. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what we want. But our actions will define the unity we so desire.
And by when you speak of our actions, I bet you're talking about everybody. The average Nigerian, the elected officer in Nigeria, the appointed officer in Nigeria, this unity that we so speak of, it is our actions that would define it in its entirety or its absence. And of course, from there we are moving on to some other political stories. Real quickly before we open the phone lines, on the Punch newspaper, this report is tagged Midterm Review APC Fights Back as Labour counters Tinubu's scorecard. Yesterday was President Tinubu's second year in office anniversary, and of course the Nigeria Labour Congress did put out what I call an unflattering assessment of Mr. President's stay in office so far. Labour said the president's reforms have brought only pain and suffering to Nigerians. According to Labour, they countered the president's claim that the worst days are over, pointing out that the economic reforms of the president have plunged over 150 million Nigerians into multidimensional poverty. And we talk about multidimensional poverty. We are looking at poverty in a multifaceted sphere from a very wide prism. We are talking the health sector possibly not working, the education sector not working. Look at what's happening with our currency. The purchasing power of the naira is very weak at the moment, and so the average Nigerian toils and is still able to earn so much money, but the money is not able to take care of very little needs. And of course, the All Progressives Congress has countered the statement by Labour. They have called Labour out, accusing Labour of misinterpreting the reality. According to APC National Vice Chairman in the Southeast, Dr. Ijoma Arodiobo, she said NLC's evaluation lacked depth and objectivity, Tony.
The truth is, I wouldn't want this to distract us, because the issue of the performance, the scorecard, everybody has got a take on it. But just like we said yesterday, what is our own report card? Our own report card is what we see on the streets.
Your report card, my report card.
You know, that is what we see on ground. I have always said efforts are not graded in this country. What is graded is results. So many of them have been languishing in many ways, and then some will tell you that you give credits to even the people of Southeast, those who were giving just 10, 20 pounds after the war we are talking about.
Regardless of how much they had.
Regardless of the amount you had in bank, you are given 20 pounds all square. And your properties were confiscated in some places, even in Port Harcourt, in many places of the country. The properties you have struggled, you have put effort, you have sweated just to put up, these things were taken away from you. And we are talking about reconciliation because, in fact, the post-war issue seems to have outweighed the war itself proper. So these things I've just said stem from our actions. And if you look around since that period, no Igbo man has come close to the seat of power. Number one seat of power. No Igbo man has come close to that because of this fear, because of this mistrust, and so many things. And it has caused more division. That is why I keep saying there is need for true reconciliation. Obasanjo attempted that true reconciliation in 1999 when he instituted Oputa panel. That panel was meant to heal the wounds, to reconcile, to bind a lot of things, but some politicize it. And the panel recommended a lot to Obasanjo that the government needs to do so that people will see this period as a period of reflection, a moment of truth. But some of these recommendations given to the presidency at that time, the administration of Olusegun Obasanjo, these things were not implemented. And the National Assembly felt that these things happen outside it because Obasanjo did not follow it the way he ought to have followed it, because definitely he should have made a provision, a bill to set up such panel where their recommendations within the bill would also enforce the parliamentarians to work on it and then give it that legal backing. He did not follow such approach. So many doubted his sincerity, if not for ostensibly trying to show reconciliation when in its real sense you did not mean it. So I don't want to go deep into some of these things because we don't have time. But the key thing remains that we have, some will tell you we have a common destiny. Let's assume if we had achieved true reconciliation, do you know where this country would have been? Do you know where this country would have been?
Do you know Nigeria, where the Southeast would have been even?
You are talking about, I'm talking about the country generally. Do you know where would have, because of non-achievement of this reconciliation, we are back where we, look at where we are. Nothing seems to be working.
Put a call across to 0803-221-6973, 0803-827-6694. Please, let us keep our thought processes concise. 1 minute. Let's do this. Good morning. Good morning. You have 1 minute. Could you please, your name, your location, straight to the point. Go ahead, please.
President 3 years in office, very, very scenario, painful and frustration. And to be honest with you and all Nigerians listening to me this morning, he has no solution to what is happening. Rather, hardship is going on. And more hardship is going on because they have no solution. They have nothing to. In fact, there is no way you can give what you cannot give what you don't have. As long as they are there, the APC government have no solution to our problem. Rather, they are creating it more and more. We need people that are intelligent, people that can make economic very good. But for these people, as long as they are there, we are going nowhere. This country is sinking every day. Good morning.
Good morning. Let's hear you. 1 minute. Good morning.
Hello?
Yes, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, my dear. Your first and sad memories back. The day that I said to me, we got to person. My name is Odazwe. I'm a victim of that war. And I am of Igbo ethnic nationality. And I have refused to be a dot in a circle, no matter. And I know that there is a deliberate conspiracy by those that find themselves in corridors of fire to keep being scared of the Igbo ethnic nationality and decide to keep giving them to be a dot in a circle. Well, no matter. Sooner than later, like they say, you don't kill a beetle. You cannot kill a beetle. No matter you smash it with your leg, you do anything. So I have refused. See, ABN, Association for Better Nigeria, also Adiola, people died. Ibrahim Babangida, president. He didn't talk about it when he was talking about Nzongo School. And so why didn't he talk about Adiola School and Association for Better Nigeria, where Igbos died? Yes, running from the north. And we Igbos, we know that. And us adults are this. And I mean, there was no reconciliation. my dear, like Tony said, that thing is not easy to hear. That was a cashier conviction. My father was giving 20 pounds. Come on. What are we talking about here? But there will be a way out. Nigeria, well, that is generally
Thank you, Dazi. Let's hear you 0803-827-6694, 0803-221-6973. Please keep it at 1 minute. Good morning. Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, my regards to Johnny Mbeki.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Kingsley Noba.
Go ahead.
Please, I want to talk about the Nigerian Biafra war. First of all, let me say that the idea is actually recognized. The civil war is actually recognized by the Nigerian government, but not officially. You know, as somebody who has taught government for years in the secondary school, there is a team that deals on major political conflicts in Nigeria. And under it, you have some subtopics like the 1953 Kano riot, which came as a result of the motion for independence by Chief Anthony Nahoro, which led to the killing of so many Igbos and other Southerners in the north. And as well, there is also the one that talks about the 1966 coup is also there. The Aburi Accord is also there. And even the Nigerian Biafra War proper is also there. So this is actually taught in the secondary school for our students to know our history as it concerns the war. And secondly, the Armed Forces Remembrance Day, which is on 15th of January every year, is done in remembrance of the gallant soldiers who fought to keep this country as one. But unfortunately, there is no any day set aside by the Nigerian government to remember the innocent people, the innocent unarmed civilians who died as a result of hunger and starvation diseases during the war. So that is the only unfortunate thing that I've seen coming from the Nigerian government. Having said that, I want also to say that man, no matter how we look at it, is a rational being and also an emotional being. So no matter how you look at it, man must always remember his past predicament.
You should be rounding off now. You should be rounding off.
Yes, I'm doing that and also feels emotional about it. So what I am saying is this. The government should find a way to come up with a way to ensure that all the issues that played out during the war is absolutely reconciled for peace and progress to
return. All right, then. Let's hear what you have to say. Good morning. Good morning. Are you there? Okay. Good morning. Okay, you should try to reconnect. Of course, it's still the Polity on Udala Radio 104.7 FM, and you can put a call across to 0803-827-6694 or 0803-221-6973 to join the conversation. Good morning.
Sammy.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. My speaker, good morning.
You're welcome. It's good to have you.
I'm probably an able man. No doubt about it. I can beat my chest and I can raise my hand high. I'm probably an able man. Congratulations to all Biafrans, all the people speaking ethnic groups in Nigeria. We will never forget our units, no matter what we are facing. We are bound to survive. But I want to give an advice to the Southeast governors. They come to my end. Everywhere is quiet. No school. Now, the question I want to ask them, what are they waiting for to incorporate this in their itinerary yearly? So it will not be like church play. Are you getting it? They said, everybody forget about it, go and visit the number again for that this weekend. Who is now keeping those orders? Are you getting it? I want to advise them. They should go back to the drawing board, put the Nigerian government to make this day sacrosanct in Southeast, because they were here in the north. They shut down schools about 3 weeks, all for religious affairs. Heaven did not fall. Let them make use of each opportunity, because if I'm a leader, I give instruction and it's not obeyed. Something is wrong somewhere. Thank you.
All right then. Good morning.
Amazing morning to you, lady of the house.
Good morning.
Honorable Speaker Olisa Mbeki, good morning.
You're welcome. It's good to have you.
Thank you so much, and Honorable Deacon, I'm pretty sure from Onitsha.
Go ahead, Honorable.
Yes, let me appreciate both of you and Udala FM for bringing us up to date. That clip was excellent. But I really appreciate the analysis given by you. It's not even good to start. You don't even start because the reconciliation is nowhere to be found. The mistake has been done, and just like Ezekiel pointed out, Southeast governors, I think June 12th have been recognized as the Democracy Day. The Southeastern governors, all the politicians here, should think outside the box on what to do. But this day, you have seen the masses. Yesterday, everywhere there was gridlock everywhere. People were, buying foodstuffs to keep, stay indoors to honor these memories of our fallen heroes. If these men did not stood their ground, if these women did not stood their ground, I don't think they are alive today. So they stood and defended us. So I think they shouldn't shy away from it. Let them make it sacrosanct that every 30th of May must be memorable and observed as a public holiday. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your contribution. Let's take one more call. Tony, before you round off today's conversation. Good morning.
My name is Comrade Walton. I'm calling you from Onitsha. Can I
go ahead, please?
Thank you, Udala FM, for that documentary you played. You see, our Southeast politicians don't like that documentary. Do you know why? Because they are living in denial. Recall how Southwest governors pushed for June 12th as public holiday. In fact, it has been transformed as Democracy Day in honor of Moshood Abiola, let Moshood Abiola. But you see, our Southeast politicians, they will continue to, I don't know how to describe them. Honestly, they would like that documentary. But just like Olisa Mbeki says, it is part of us and we cannot run away from it. Even if this generation refuse to teach or refuse to do something about our history, the coming generation will still. So this is something you cannot erase from your history. So I want to use this opportunity to urge our Southeast politicians, governors, both senators and past ministers to push for a national holiday for this day. It is very, very important. Even if it doesn't happen this time, it will still happen in the future.
All right.
Good morning.
Good morning. Tony, I'm sorry we cannot take any more calls.
Yes.
You need to round up today's conversation.
And then just one thing we're calling. Probably we're going to call for what some will call, day of mourning. It could be People's Day of Mourning, as we have in Germany, because Germany has what they call a Volkstrauertag, a day of mourning, recognizing all the victims. Because the one we have every January 15 is those military or soldiers who died in their effort to keep the country. We are not talking about other victims. We are not talking about the civilians. We should be concerned about because the soldiers who died during the war, they are few compared to the civilians, especially women and children. Probably we may call it anything. We may not even call it Biafra Day because you may not like the name. But it could be the National Mourning Day, as we have in Germany. They have something like that. So that is one. And then secondly, it's important we also understand that history during the time of Obasanjo was for no just reason, because the reasons they gave was inexplicable, removed from our curriculum. In fact, the subject was replaced with social studies, civic education, and even government. And the argument then was that many people felt adequately, like the subject. Not that the students don't like the subject, because we know the reason it was removed. The reason was the issue of civil war. Many wouldn't want it to be taught in schools, and it was removed. That was the period of Obasanjo. That was in 2007.
How do you deny a people of knowing their history?
When I was saying that this thing was not recognized, I mean official recognition. Any form of recognition that is not official, I'm talking about the Civil War, once it's not official, it's not recognition.
You know, when you were talking about ways that today can be marked, apart from what you mentioned, today isn't a day for people to sit at home, actually, if you ask me. I mean, outside of the fact that it's okay that people may not decide to, if they agree, that it becomes a holiday. What about the places that we still have monuments of this war? There are still places, we need to show our children, outside of telling them by word of mouth, there are traces. I learned there is even a house that still bears marks of the bullets.
Definitely. These
from
marks
the
are there.
war.
These buildings
Here
are there.
in Onitsha. Do our children, have they seen these things for themselves? The hearsay is enough.
If you don't tell your story, someone will tell the story.
And tell their version of it.
And that is the version of it. So it's important, because thank God for the government again, because I remember the Minister of Education, Adamu, in 2016 announced plans to restore history in our secondary schools, and then the implementation started sometime around 2022. By 2022, the government officially reintroduced history into the basic education curriculum, with about 3,700 teachers selected for training to take this subject, to teach this subject. So the important is this: we cannot avoid our shadow. These things are there, and we must find ways to honor the victims, those whom, for whatever reason, not anything of their faults, they were just killed, slaughtered.
Thank you, Tony, for your wonderful analysis this morning. We are definitely going to continue the conversations on different topical issues affecting us as a people. On Monday, of course, this is the last edition for the week, and coincidentally, it is the last for the month of May 2025. Thank you for joining us, for your contributions. We'll do this again next week. Until then, my name is Chisom Chinedu, and of course, I am leaving you in the hands of one of my favorite artists. His name is Dwayne the Stoic, and the song is called This Fight.